I hope you guys are having an amazing week. We're on Thursday, and I've been posting a lot this week about Foster Care Awareness Month. So, yes, it is Foster Care Awareness Month. So, I've been using this opportunity to share information about the foster care system. There are so many levels to it. It's not just a really easy peasy black and white explanation or, system. Like I said, there's a lot of layers to it. So I hope through these little Instagram posts, I can help share some knowledge and information. And through that, hopefully, we can create more compassion for this demographic. So, yesterday, I did post three facts about things that foster youth experience. I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive today and talk a little bit about who goes into foster care, which are children of adults that have lost access to their children to the system. It's a part of the equation that is not focused, that there's not enough focus or attention on, and it needs to be talked about more. So a lot of times people look at the foster care system and they think, okay, I'm going to be a foster parent or support a foster youth, and if I foster, I'll probably adopt the child and whatnot. That's not necessarily the goal. It oftentimes does happen because for a child to go back to their biological parent is very difficult. The system poses a lot of bureaucracies and challenges from a child getting back to their biological parent. So what usually will happen is once a child gets into the foster care system, they languish in the system. They either are paired with a foster family, foster parents. They might stay with a foster parent temporarily for a few months or a few years. And if the biological parent gets back on their feet or gets, let's say their life in order, they can get their child back. That's what the goal is. Now, this doesn't happen most of the time. So what most of the time happens is that the child doesn't go back to their biological parent. They will either, like I said, languish in the system, stay with foster parents. They might have more than one foster parent. Maybe a foster parent or a foster family decides it's not the right fit, so they hand the child over back to the caseworker, the social worker, and then it's the job of the social worker to find a new family, a new placement for the foster child. This happens a lot. So that's why foster children oftentimes get bounced around from home to home to home. This in itself causes a lot of trauma. Being in different home environments, there's no stability. So this is a problem. Another thing that happens is that a lot of times they end up in group homes. And like I've said before, group homes are institutionalized settings, and hang on here just a second. I'm about to lose my power source here, so I'm going to plug in, and hopefully that will help us here. Oh, great. This is not going to help. Oh, man. All right, I was going to do something today, but I guess I'm not going to do it because I got to get my power source in. So I'll have to do that on a different day. Anyways, I'm good now. So, like I said, group homes end up being these institutionalized settings, very cold environments, not really a love-based, compassionate place. Not to say that, they're treated poorly, but they're not treated that great, right? We're humans, and we don't belong in institutions. So anyways, I want to talk a little bit about the other side of it, the biological parent. So biological parents are not trying to lose their children, okay? Oftentimes they end up losing their children to the system because of drug abuse, or they're in jail, or a mental health issue, or physical abuse, or sexual abuse. So some cases are more challenging, right? If there's sexual abuse, it's not a place for a child. So a child is safer to be removed and not in that environment. But things like situations where even poverty, if a parent is facing poverty, loss of a job, they just can't get their life together, they can't get back on their feet, they can, maybe they're living in their car, maybe they're living on the streets, And if they are in this kind of a situation with the child, with their biological child, this poses it's child endangerment. So if social workers find out about this, or the Department of Children and Family Services finds out, the child will be removed and put into foster care. So again, foster care is not supposed to be forever. It's supposed to be, we're going to take care of your kid through this system until you as the parent get your life in order. Once you're able to provide a safe environment, we're going to send the kid back to you. Now, there's so many reasons why this doesn't happen. So for one, the system itself is extremely bureaucratic. Once a parent loses their child to foster care, they have to jump through hurdles to get their child back. There's a series of classes they have to take, workshops, certifications. And a lot of times, a lot of these parents, these biological parents, don't have the means to even get to some of those courses or classes. So that in itself creates a problem. And with all these additional hurdles, sometimes parents give up, or they get denied. So there's a lot of reasons why parent and their children, their biological children, are not reunited. Now, another thing that I want to say is that this demographic of parents, now, I also want to make a couple statements here. I'm not a social worker, okay? I'm just a compassionate individual that cares about this cause. I research a lot and read about this cause. I read about the statistics. I attend workshops and familiarize myself with this demographic and the problems and troubles that they go through. I have interviewed and continue to interview lots of subject matter experts, including social workers, caseworkers, lawyers that help with these types of cases, foster youth, foster parents. So I'm involved in a lot of communities with these demographics, and so I listen to their stories, I interact, I ask questions to kind of get to know so that I can be a better advocate because everyone's really busy in the mess of what's going on in their lives, whether it's a social worker or a judge or, foster parents or, whatnot. So there's not enough advocates speaking on their behalf. And so that's what I do. As a public speaker, I'm going to use that skill for a good purpose. And that's to educate everyone else on what's going on, because most people don't know what's going on. I didn't know what was going on. Prior to joining a nonprofit helping former foster youth, I had no idea about the details of the foster care system. And that experience was really eye-opening to me. And so once my eyes were open, I was like, Jesus, like this is not good. And I don't think people know about this, because if enough people knew about this, we wouldn't be letting this happen. There's a lot that needs to change within the system. So many things that need to be addressed. So many needs are lacking. So anyways, back to talking about the other side of it, which is the biological parents. So I told you what some of the challenges are for them to getting their children back. Now let's talk about this demographic for a second, okay? Usually the people that lose their children to foster care. Oh, and my point about giving you my background, I'm not a social worker. This is all based on my subjective experience and research and interviews and reading, whatnot. What I have gathered through observation is that the demographic that ends up losing their children to foster care, this is a demographic of people that are troubled. And when I say troubled, I'm not saying that they're bad people. They're troubled. These are people that typically, a lot of them have also gone through the foster care system themselves when they were younger. There's a cycle that perpetuates. And if that cycle is not broken, it just continues to perpetuate itself. So these are parents that themselves are barely hanging on, whether it's their job, whether it's an abusive relationship, not being able to make ends meet, coming from abusive backgrounds themselves, being abused as children, sexually, physically, so many things. Parents themselves, the biological parents, their parents, drug users or were in jail. So if you look at the demographics that lose their children to foster care. Those things that I just stated are very, very common. So the likelihood of them trying to get it together and get their kids back out of the system, probably slim to none, which makes sense because that's what the statistics show. So I want to point out something called trauma. I know that as of late in the last few years, there's been more conversation around healing, around these concepts in psychology around healing and trauma. As humans, all of us, no matter what our backgrounds are, what kind of families we come from, we've all experienced trauma to some degree or other. Some people experience more severe traumas, are traumatized severely, right? So people that have been sexually molested or raped or physically, emotionally abused, these are more severe traumas. The general public is not aware of some of these terminologies that I'm going to use, but I'm hoping to educate a little bit. So I'm going to talk about something called the ACEs study. So the ACEs study was something that I'm not sure exactly which year this came out, but it's something that exists among social workers that they use this as a scale to when they get a case, a foster kid or whatever part of this human services that they're working with, they will assess people based on the ACEs scale. And the ACEs scale is like a scale between 1 to 10, 1 being low traumatic type of events in your life, 10 being really high. So there's a series of questions that they will ask. Was there sexual abuse in your household? Was there poverty in your household? Was there a parent that experienced alcoholism in your household? All of these different things. Once they tally it up, you get a score. Okay, so like I said, 1, if out of all those questions you answered no to, then you're on the low part of the ACEs scale, right? If you answered yes to more of those things, you're on the higher part of the ACEs scale. So most of these foster youth, definitely, they're high. They have high ACEs scores, and subjectively speaking, if you talk to their biological parents, those parents also have very high ACEs scores. In the human services industry, where social workers and whatnot do their jobs, there's a lot of training around something called trauma-informed care. So in the past, right, this is still a newer concept that hasn't trickled over into general society. So I'm hoping by having this conversation, it becomes more of a normalized, understood concept. So trauma-informed care, I'm going to give you a couple examples of what it is. So I mentioned that most of us humans, we've all experienced trauma in our lives in different ways, but some people experience more severe trauma. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on that aspect of it. So for example, let's say a kid comes to school, let's say I'm a teacher, and I have a student who's misbehaving, and I notice that, he might be a foster kid, and, maybe his parent just died or something like that. And I'm not taking those things into consideration. He's misbehaving, so he needs to be punished. And in front of the whole classroom, I punish this child, and I get mad at him, and I tell him that he's being a really bad kid, and he needs to be punished, and he needs to be sent outside, and I do it in a way to kind of shame him. This is kind of traditionally how people have disciplined. Teachers discipline this way, parents discipline this way. So this goes against trauma-informed care, okay? Trauma-informed care will take into consideration that this child is probably acting out and misbehaving, not because he's a bad kid, not because he's irresponsible, not because he doesn't want to pay attention, but because he had a recent death in his family, his parent died, or he's in the foster care system, so he's experiencing trauma in his life right now. So a trauma-informed care approach is going to include a lot of compassion, and it's going to include all of those, taking all of those things into consideration. And as a teacher, if I was a teacher, and if this was the scenario, and if instead of the traditional way that teachers and parents have disciplined, if I chose to use a trauma-informed care approach, I would maybe pull him aside, have a conversation with him, ask him how he's doing, and be kind and compassionate when dealing with that situation, as opposed to just reprimanding him and shaming him in front of others. So, for example, if somebody, an adult, let's say, has a substance abuse problem, a caseworker has a protocol of different steps that they have to take in order to interact with that substance abuse, that person who is abusing substances, using a trauma-informed care approach. So the old method, the traditional method that people have done, write people off, you're a druggie, you're, a low on the totem pole in society. No, that's not trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care takes into consideration that you are most likely a drug user or abusing alcohol or an alcoholic as a way to cope. It's a coping mechanism for survival. So it doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does a deep dive, because on the surface, as a society, we're a very judgmental society. Humans, we're all very judgmental, right? We look at situations, we look at people, and we're easy to judge, Well, why don't you just do this? Well, why don't you just do that? Oh, well, you're just a loser because you're an alcoholic. Well, you're just this, you're just that. If you remove the layers, that's not the case. Most people are not trying to be alcoholics. Most people are not trying to be drug addicts. Most people, when these things happen to them, or they choose these paths, or they become become addicted to drugs or become an alcoholic, this is not something that happens overnight. This is a repeated pattern. And a lot of times it stems from finding ways to numb the pain, finding coping mechanisms. So we need to be, as a society, we need to be more compassionate and more understanding, and start researching and learning about what is trauma-informed care. Okay? So that's one thing. And the whole point of this is, it is Foster Care Awareness Month, and I wanted to shed a little bit of light on the biological parents of foster kids that go into the system. And one thing for sure, and this is something that I may want to tackle over time, is how do we provide assistance and support to the biological parents? Because if the goal of foster care is to reunify children with their parents, the system is a failed system. People, lawyers, judges, social workers, everybody knows it's a failed system. And it's not any one person's fault. Everyone means well, everyone's trying, but there needs to be some reform. There needs to be additional resources. There needs to be outside of the box thinking. And that's not happening. It hasn't happened. Those are some of the challenges that are going on in the system. Like I said, we need more compassion in our society. We need to have more compassion for the parents. We need to find ways to provide resources and benefits to people. So that's what we need to do. So anyways, I'm going to wrap this up here. We have, and I do want to share this, that we do have a campaign through Sexy Boss Babe called the One Box Equals One Meal campaign. And so for every one box of Sexy Boss Babe products purchased, we're going to donate one meal to transition age foster youth. And I've mentioned this before, that only less than 3% of foster youth ever make it to college. So with everything that I just talked about right now in this cycle, it shouldn't be a surprise. So those few that end up making it, we really need to provide some support. So please visit sexybossbabe.com, make a purchase of some quick nails, and that will equal one meal to transition age foster youth. And quick nails are lots of fun. You can apply them in a pinch in just a couple of minutes if you don't have time to go to the salon. And for those of you that like what I'm talking about, want to support this demographic, you can, and maybe you're not into nails, you can still support, buy a few boxes, and in the notes section, just type in donate these nails. And we have another program where we do donate quick nails to foster youth and sex trafficking survivors. And sometimes a lot of people will be like, well, why do foster youth and survivors need nails? One thing that a lot of people don't know is that sex traffickers use nail services as a way to lure youth into sex trafficking. So this is one way that we try to work on prevention efforts. So we provide this product, nail kits, to these youth, and hope that it will keep them protected from getting it from traffickers. So we do this partnership with CASA Los Angeles. They love the program. They've said that it's very impactful for their youth and want to continue the program with us. We also do this nail donation program or for Journey Out, and they rescue young women out of sex trafficking. So this is a way that you guys can help. You can check out some of my other previous posts about different ways that you can get involved, becoming a foster parent, becoming a CASA, donating straight out to your favorite charity. If you go on our website, sexybossbabe.com, you can see the different charity organizations that we collaborate with. So if any of those interest you, support them. But you'll definitely support us by purchasing a box of quick nails through our 1 box equals 1 meal campaign, and we're able to donate a meal to transition age foster youth. In this way, you're also supporting a local-owned business, a female-owned business, a woman of color-owned business. So we thank you and appreciate you guys for listening, learning more about this cause, learning more about this demographic. And again, May is Foster Care Awareness Month. So check us out at sexybossbabe.com and give us some support. Have a great day, guys.